Our next panel is titled Building a Global Community with HR. The speakers are Sergiu Ardelean, so if I make a mistake, sorry about this, CEO and co-founder of Artivive, Mike Pell, Envisioneer of the Microsoft Garage, Laetitia Bochud, Director, President, Virtual Switzerland, XR for Europe, Gregg Katano, SVP, Strategic Partnerships and Business Development, Medici, and our moderator will be Mιχάλης Stagos, who was great, and he replaced Maria Nicolci, who was feeling rather poorly. I'm absolutely sure he will do a great job. Please welcome them.
Hello, everyone. And thank you for joining today. I'm Mιχάλης Στάγκος. I'm a partner of Wellstone Capital, a creative entrepreneur and investor, but most of all, ecosystem builder. That's why I jumped in and wanted very much to have this discussion with you about building a global community around XR. If I may ask very briefly, like an elevator pitch of 30 seconds to introduce yourself to the audience, and then I know all of you that legends and with extreme experience, but just to engage more the audience. And shall we start with Laetitia?
Yeah, I knew it. Hi. My name is Laetitia Bochud, or Laetitia Bochud, whatever you want. I am the director of one association in Switzerland that is called Virtual Switzerland, that fosters and promotes developments, integration, and tech transfer in XR technologies. And then I am also the president of XR for Europe, and that's a bit more, you know, it has more to do with Greece. And this is a pan-European association seeking to really federate all XR professionals and liaise and create synergies among countries, clusters, and, you know, individuals.
Thank you. Mike?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Pell. I lead the Microsoft Garage in New York City. Turns out I've been working on the metaverse for 25 years now. Believe it or not, it's been going on that long. We're a bunch of crazy kids who thought after reading Snow Crash, we can go and build a 3D world inside of a browser. What a crazy idea that was. Turns out we're all still doing the same thing, but this is very exciting to be here. Thank you.
Sergio.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation and being here. I'm Sergio. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Artivive. Artivive is the biggest augmented reality art platform. We have around 230,000 creatives and artists on the platform creating augmented reality art. And Artivive is what it is today just through the community, through the artists, through the content. So I think for us it's very important to highlight that the technology without the content, without the community is just a technology.
And last but not least, Gregg.
Thank you. Kalispera. Thank you for having me. I'm just super honored to be here, and what an incredible facility and a incredible lineup of a lot of my friends and just a lot of thought leaders in the XR space. So just, you know, grateful to be here and grateful to see all of you here. I am recently took a new job. Actually, I'm only 1 week in, but I've been in virtual reality since 2014. And started out with Google Cardboard, if you remember those cardboard boxes where you put your phone in it. And then most recently, I was senior vice president of US operations for a company called Hologate out of Munich, Germany. And believe it or not, we're the #1 virtual reality company in location-based entertainment. We're in 42 countries. We just had our 17 millionth player go through, and we just released Ghostbusters. But just last week, I started a new position as Senior Vice President for strategic partnerships and business development for a company called Medici. And Medici was previously Mousetrap and doing all these huge immersive experiences for big theme parks. And you look them up, you'll probably have experienced a lot of those yourself. And I'm hoping to, see if we can connect these immersive experiences, location-based with the metaverse, extend that experience. So thank you.
Super. Good luck with your new endeavor.
Thank you.
And let's go and discuss a bit how XR technologies are, what are the challenges and the opportunities in the creation of global communities. And can we build, at the end of the day, meaningful relationship through XR?
Yes. Actually, I have a very good example, because when I was at the Venice Film Festival last year, we were doing an experience, and there were two Chinese ladies that had made the trip, and they said, "Oh, but we actually met on VR chat, and this is the first time we physically meet." And so it was the exact, realization of what you just said, that it can be physical to virtual or the contrary. And I've also a good friend and a VR entrepreneur who is very keen on making love with her partner in VR. So yeah, those are, these things happen.
Yeah. Mike?
I think that because we're all here together, this is the best community, right? When we're in person. It's a lot of times, as we just lived through the pandemic, when we just can't. And when you just can't, there's very little that we know of that's more effective than virtual reality for feeling like you're somewhere, right? And with people. It's kind of uncanny. Like we were talking earlier, like Alvin talked about, your brain filling in things for you. That's what happens. You actually want that person to be there. And so it can be very, very powerful to bring people together when you can't be physical. We've all been working in a hybrid way, right? There's always somebody who's not around when you're doing things. So I think that being able to build communities in a hybrid way is never going to go away, right? We're never going to go back to how it used to be. It's never going to be all physical. It's never, not going to be all virtual. It'll be this hybrid for a long time, and it can be very effective.
I think in our case is XR is empowering people, right? If you're looking at the art world today, we have on one hand the digital art with NFTs and with the metaverse and with all the students which are coming out with all the tools they're growing up with and creating art in this space. And on the other hand, we have the traditional art, right? With museums and galleries and traditional artists, and these two worlds feel that they are going separate ways. But if you're looking at the future, like you said, it will be hybrid also for the art. Artworks will be at the same time digital and haptic. It will be in a gallery, but also in a virtual space. So what we're doing with Artivive is empowering these people, stripping the technology to make a no-code tool so they can create these artworks without understanding the technology. And being in this group of creatives, it creates a community where they're coming and creating together, co-creating, having exhibitions together, working with institutions. So XR, in our case, is empowering these people to understand how we can bring these two worlds together. So on one hand, we have the traditional artists that can extend their artworks in a digital space, and at the same time, we have the digital artists that can be physically in a gallery or in a museum or in a street art. So it's giving the power to the creatives to go new ways, and at the same time, they're part of a bigger group that are somehow defining the art form of the 21st century.
Beautiful. So I'm a bit of a community builder out in Los Angeles, California. I would have events on all types of technology, AI, virtual reality, whatever, just to bring the community together. And when I first got when I had my first taste of virtual reality, I was just blown away, and I just thought, what a great tool to connect people. But I'm sure there's maybe some of you out in the audience right now that you're here today because you're curious. You're curious to find out, is this something that I can get into? And I started to run into a lot of people that just didn't know the first step about how do you get in, what is this metaverse? What is virtual reality? Is it just like 3D all over again? And what I had decided that I would do is just work on the railroad, right? Work on laying down the groundwork so that more people can create experiences, learn about virtual reality, create experiences for enterprise, such as education, healthcare. And so a lot of people thought it was a boring route that I took, but with Google Cardboard, with my events, and with Hologate, you think about it, it's all distribution. It was all a connection point to the consumer. And I want many of you out in the audience to be able to try it for the first time. And maybe we're too afraid of going to the store and buying one. Well, maybe you can go to a family entertainment center and play it for the first time and be wowed by the feeling of being with your friends, seeing this almost holographic experience, and we're all seeing our mannerisms match exactly what we're doing in real life, seeing us talk to each other, over the audio. And you got to think that, the youth of today, with Minecraft and with Roblox and Fortnite, they're already in that metaverse space. And my generation and a lot of my friends are going, well, that's freaky. I can't even imagine being around tens of millions of people. But that's where we're headed, as Amy said, as Alvin said, that's where we're headed. And I feel that we just have to try it, and once we start immersing ourselves into that environment, we're going to start to realize what all the youth have already known for many, many years, that, oh, it's connecting me with people from all around the world. And so, just to wrap my, my answer up, is that this right here is a community. All of you here today, got into your cars or got dropped off, or here because you're part of this common interest in learning more about XR and the metaverse. So I applaud all of us for all being here, and hopefully we can build this together.
You opened a tough issue that we're going to get back later around how you, because, our kids, the new generation, is they live in, Roblox and in MSCOMM, and it's so different how you communicate with them now. But I want to ask you something. In the world that becomes more and more divided, do you see as XR playing a cross-cultural understanding and empathy can act as a tool of reunite and people in a different mindset?
In these immersive virtual spaces or worlds that are social and collaborative that we tend to call metaverses, and the word just made its entrance in the Larousse, which is the French dictionary, so now it's official. So it's also about communities, because each room or space is about a community, and you will seek communities that are close to you. What is interesting is when you mix those communities and when you open up to other communities.
It's interesting, but and that's tougher and tougher to connect.
Yeah.
The differences become wider between, political groups, interest groups.
Yeah. But you can also become who you want to be for the outside world, meaning the digital outside world. For instance, if you, if in a certain country you cannot be who you truly are, then you can express that side of you in a virtual way and meet people who are part of this community you would like to, to join. So for me, it's also a bridge, not only into a different dimension, but in a different social, framework, really.
Interesting. I was told, I was at a dinner party. I live in New York City. I was at a dinner party one night, and I was talking to a teacher about how kids are like, they're always in there, whatever, Fortnite or And I was saying, can't they just appreciate the real world? And he looked at me and said, wow, you have this completely wrong. He said, you're old. Like, you have no idea. What we old people think the physical real world is, kids don't regard that way anymore. The digital world and their communities are just as real as this table to them. There's no difference at all. And so what we maybe used to think of as communities are sort of like an artificial construct to them. They don't think of it in that way. There's no, like Amy touched on this, right? There's a blending of everything. And so for us, we have to think about things a bit differently. Like we talk about communities and forming communities and building communities. I don't think the kids think about it that way at all. It's, you know, who are my friends? Who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to, you know, trade art with? Who do I want to hang out and go to a show with? It's not that artificial construct. And so maybe we do have it all wrong. And we have to rethink what communities really are going forward.
That's true. And, you know, education is, we have to come to another round, but is education obsolete? Is the educational systems across the world right now obsolete? How they educate our kids on how to be resilient and how to be creative and how that they develop their decision-making skills, because all the others, I think, through XR and through the development of AI will be solved. What do you think?
Well, with education, it's near and dear to my heart. I say this to other groups, but I was a horrible student growing up, and maybe it was undiagnosed ADHD, but I was just all over the place, hard for me to focus, and I realized that if I had learned in a spatial environment, I think I would have picked up things so much more. I'm a very, I like by doing, so the fact that there's now interaction, the fact that I would be learning about history in the places, the recreation of places that were actually, you know, taking place in history.
And to bounce back on what you're saying, actually the kids, at least in my countries, I would say, you know, here in Europe, the kids who did best during the pandemic were the gamers, because they were in touch with other peers, and were also the students who were able to have online teaching, but more than online teaching, who started using, you know, 2.5D like Virbella, or these types of spaces where you could at least feel a sense of camaraderie and you know, social life. So I think the isolation had a toll on their mental health, but for those who were really into virtual spaces of all kinds, be it game or classroom, it was much more easy to endure.
Right, and even Zoom. Like a lot of people would say, oh, I'm all zoomed out. You know, I don't want that anymore.
You mean Microsoft Teams?
Did I say Zoom? I'm sorry.
Say 2D platforms. You know?
Right. I mean, any platform. We're agnostic here. Of course. That it was at least something, right? It was at least something where we can see the instructors, see our friends. And to your point about the gaming, they've been connecting with people all around the world and saying that, no, these are my friends. And even though that they have never met them in person, that's, as Mike pointed out, you know, it's as real as this table to them. And so the one thing I'll mention, maybe some of you have seen this one study. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study, and they said that when individuals are learning in virtual reality, they retain the information 70 or 80% more than if they just read the material or heard a lecture. And I just go, that is what I'm feeling or that's what I felt the first time as in virtual reality. Presence of somebody that was standing next to me, or the instruction when I was learning in that actual environment. It really stuck with me, and it became this very tangible memory for me.
I have a BMOL with you know, like just one thing about these studies. Actually, there is also a novelty aspect that goes away, it fades. And so the retention, the cognitive retention is bound to decrease, but stays quite high, you know, in respect to real life teaching, but still it decreases a bit. So not to want to spend, you know, the entire 8-hour classes in a VR headset here.
Mike?
I have nothing to say about that, but I was curious about your community. So do they bond over art?
Yes, they do. So we do have some projects where we are trying to bring all stakeholders together, so also institutions, and then we have open calls where the artists can chip in and work together on different projects.
Do they teach each other?
Yes. So we have, I think, over 30 different tutorials that were created by the community for the community. We're just hosting them. So they are also having a Discord channel where they're learning, and because there are so many different ways how you can create content in a digital space, and they're very curious, right? Because the moment that they're getting into, say, let's say, a traditional artist and learns how to create stop motion animation, then it's the next step. How can I create a 3D model? And okay, how can I do with Blender the next steps? And they're helping them each other. And we had a project where we had I think around 10 mentees with 10 mentors working on one exhibition. So the idea was that people that wanted to learn were connected with people that wanted to teach. And it went so good that we decided to have an exhibition in Vienna. And we told them, it's like, we will have the space. We'll invite people to, come to the exhibition and explore the art that you created. But unfortunately,
physical space.
Sorry?
Physical space.
A physical space, yeah, where we had the artworks presented, and through the smartphones, they could interact with a digital extension of these artworks. And funny enough, we told them, it's like, everybody's welcome, but as a startup, we will not have the money to finance you traveling here. And I was so surprised to see mentors and mentees coming from Mexico, from Canada, from the US, from all over Europe, from Istanbul, joining in Vienna, and they spent the whole weekend. It's like they just were waking up, everybody was in different hotels and Airbnbs, waking up, meeting for breakfast, spending the whole day together. It was the first time they met in person. And through art, everybody came together, and now they're friends. Some also managed to sell the artworks during the exhibition, so it was, for many, a life-changing experience, but all came together because they created these experiences.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday about how at the heart of community seems, from my experience, to be sharing. Like people become part of communities to share what they've learned or what they're excited about, and to learn from other people. So you get to be a better artist, or a better musician, whatever it is. So when we build communities in the real world, a lot of times it's because you want to show off what you did, right? Like you want to just show your friends, like, hey, like look at this cool thing I made in the in the Maker Lab. I want to teach you how to do it. Oh, by the way, how did you do that? And so that seems to be the very core of why communities form. Right?
Yeah.
And I think in our case is also they identify themselves as augmented reality artists. So there is a platform, and they have a new identity of what they're doing, of what their creations are. And then they're in this bigger family under the Artivive platform, and we're just there to facilitate, to bring one artist with the other artists together.
And then there is also the political aspect, I would say, because there is the sharing. And then you need, we were speaking about charismatic leaders who actually make it enticing to join these communities, because perhaps it's also about people that are totally spread all over the place and don't know about each other. I come from a country where we have 4 official languages in Switzerland, and I always say I'm a bridge builder. I build bridges between regions and between countries, and you need somebody who does the path finding and who goes up also to the political entities and say, listen, we have an ecosystem here. We have an industry, and it's not gonna go away, because they always think, oh, it's a fad. And I'm like, well, look at it now, and so slowly we get to have this interest group persona, even though it wasn't what we wanted to build at first, but you become, sort of the leader of an ecosystem. And then you feel also very, you need to give back. And so we share our contacts, we share our impressions, we share our best practice. We do exactly, this is about sharing and being open-minded.
I sort of have a question, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
for the panelists. So a lot of you have heard about DAOs, right? DAO, right?
Yep.
So in the Web3 world, it's a way for communities, people who are like-minded, to want to do something together, right? And I think the basic theory is there's no leader per se, although there always is. But the group is supposed to agree on things to be able to move whatever forward that they're
consensus.
doing. Right. So are DAOs the new communities, or is that just an experiment that's going to fizzle out?
You know, I think it's a very idealist governmental. It's a governance that is totally diluted, so it would require a lot of consensus. And since I come from one of the oldest democratic, or actually the most direct democracy in the world, it is not easy to move things forward at the pace that digitization is going if you ask everyone. So very quickly you would have a triangular, you know, a pyramidal system where, again, a certain community would form and have one person as a representative.
I think in our case, what we found out, and it was more like coming from a feeling when we decided to build the company and the startup. So we're a business for profit, right? And we decided from the beginning to make a platform where the creatives are paying to use the tool. Because every company will always follow the interests of the creatives, because every company is following the interests where the money is coming from. So from the beginning, we said, okay, we're trying to build a community. The more we have, the more we can afford. The more the chipping in, the more we can afford. And this is a very well way how we are always looking into the interests of the majority of our creatives. If it's the features that we're building, or if it's the idea of where we're going, we're always in touch with the community, and they feel this. So they're also very communicative, giving us feedback on what they're missing, on what they would like to see. But obviously, there are smaller groups that maybe are not for the majority. But we're seeing then, okay, how can we feed the majority? And this is a little bit like a DAO, right? Because we want them to pay, because if they're not happy, they will not pay anymore. So we will have a problem with the company.
But you don't have the overhead of smart contracts and people not agreeing, and like, why are we doing this? And yeah, I have a lot to say about that. Maybe another time. But to go back to XR, right, and the idea of XR and communities, there's a reason to use tools and technologies like we've been hearing all day so far, right? And there's no reason to force people into an artificial construct to be a community. But the truth is that there's a lot of advantages to using XR technologies to form those kind of relationships, right? Because there's just things that you can't get any other way unless you're physically sitting next to somebody. True. So I think that XR is really a great platform to build and feed and grow communities, but it can't be the only way.
No, and I wanted just quickly to bounce back on what Sergiu said about money, because here in Europe, we are heavily sponsored, if you want, via public funding and subsidies of all kinds. And so XR technologies is also regrouping in associations and clusters in order to get their voice heard in a very crowded, industrial ecosystem where you need to say, XR, please, and the metaverse, have you heard? And you need to advance your agenda as well in this very competitive, subsidized landscape.
Yep. Yeah. Right. If I may say something, is that we've all been talking about community in the real life form. We've learned how human nature works. We learned that you can have this DAO and nobody's the leader, but then it just naturally happens. And then technology, like what Alvin was talking about with Vivers, or with the headset, or the fact that it's going to be somewhat interoperable. You can access it through the mobile phone, through a laptop. That it's really about creating the access points to a real-life community. People just getting together, sharing, common interests that want to congregate. But we, all of us in this room are hopefully the ones that are going to determine how we're going to get there. You know, what's the technology? And at the end of the day, it's really just a tool. You know, it's a platform like.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, I didn't want to
that
interrupt.
could align with the next question and how, at the end of the day, XR technologies are evolving in the next decade and how they will impact communities, global communities per se.
I think it's like we're just experimenting, right? It's like everybody, metaverse, and it's like, oh, is it there still metaverse? And what is the metaverse? And it's like we're trying now to do a lot of things, also with NFTs and also with the different hardware. We do not have the solution yet, and I don't think that it's just a process. Also, how new generations are coming, how new ideas are coming. It's a process that is just moving along, and the things that add value to our lives will stick. So we don't have to define, what will be in 10 years, which will be the technology. I think it's such a great way because all these communities and everything that we're doing is international. So we're getting together in summits like this and discussing about ideas, and then a new idea is coming out, and then everybody's hyped about that. And then we'll see the advantages that it has, like with NFTs, right? The first time when we discussed what is digital art worth? When we started in 2017, everybody was like, there is no such thing as digital art. Now there is. The NFTs are not what they were last year, but they still changed our mindset. And I think everything that we're doing in this space is just experimenting and see where the whole journey goes.
And the structuring, because with the DAO, you're saying, and with what you were also mentioning, I think that the structuring is currently happening, and perhaps this will make DAOs impossible, so decentralized autonomous organizations.
Very good.
Yeah, did my homework.
I can never remember.
No, but because we didn't mention it before, so, and people say, So yes, but we're actually in a phase of structuring. And at the European Commission's level, they're looking into how to really not only structure, but actually, secure the technology. And so the interoperability is one thing, but there is also the standardization, and that standardization will recluster economies, I have the impression, instead of declustering. And that's what we're seeking to do, to have an international worldwide reach, right? And that might get in the way. So.
All those parties to all agree on a standard. And I was one of the earlier adopters for 3D when it had come back, the stereoscopic 3D, and everyone was excited about this. We had the run in the 50s, and then the 80s, and then it came in the 2000s. And there were so many parties that had to agree, right? You had the networks, the studios, the TV manufacturers, the glasses manufacturers, and there's Real D glasses, passive. There's the Expand glasses that were active. Dolby was coming out with their glasses, so everyone was trying to vie for the standard, right? Hopefully there'll be the VHS or the Betamax of the 3D movement, and it failed because nobody would agree. I mean, as one of the reasons, and then it kind of defaulted to the gimmicky 3D. But it was really, I saw it as more about it's going to be tough to get all the planets in alignment on the standardization.
Yeah. Like there is no one open internet, because when you go to certain countries, you can't enter the same panorama, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely. On the technology side, I think the way that it's going to evolve, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later today, we'll be able to see our communities in different ways. Yeah. So right now, community is a very amorphous thing, right? Like we all know, like we're all in the XR community. Well, when you leave this building, I don't know where you went, and I don't know what you're doing, and I don't know what you're thinking, unless we're communicating somehow, And so the data viz technologies that we all use, especially now, are getting better and better. And we'll actually be able to have more of a spatial sense. So XR is about dimensionality and spatialness. We'll actually have a sense for where our community is and what is it feeling and how is it growing or shrinking or interacting. And we'll be able to see these things. and understand it in different ways. And maybe that will help a little bit with sort of moving things forward.
Yeah.
Like sort of taking the temperature, as we would say in the States, right? Like how's everybody feeling about this right now? Actually be able to see that in a visualization.
And lots of research goes into that as well, like all the biofeedback that you use in clinical trials and for all types of applications of the technology. And actually, what I foresee, and that's a very good point, that we will feel where we are, because this is the next phase, right? Yeah. And we're already really heavily working on like skin thin haptics, and it's funny because to go back to communities in Switzerland, at Virtual Switzerland, our community started at the research centers because the public funding was for research-based innovation, and
across
that
Europe, the same thing.
That's the same, right?
Across Europe.
Yeah. And that's that was at the core of this community building that we've done since 2016. And so I guess that the next level as well is currently in laboratories and in very high-profile institutes of technology. And you have one in Crete. I know that they are heavily working on that at Forth.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a concept that I talked about last year called the neuroverse. And the neuroverse is what basically all of our sensors feed into. It's a substrate to power the metaverse, to power the AI verse, whatever. But it will be able to take sentiment and feeling and actually help you inject it into experiences. So feeling will come to community, will come to gaming, will come to business through the neuroverse layer of sensors, your watch, your ring, like whatever, collecting all this information. But I think that communities are about feeling. They're about emotion and sentiment, and so now maybe we'll get to another level that we've never had before, right?
Where you know what you're.
Yeah.
What actually you can detect better what are the feelings in your
maybe horrifying for speakers to know. Like if I saw like a feed app, if I just said something and on my monitor I could see how you're all feeling.
And the last question: what do you see that as the biggest challenge facing the XR industry as it's building these communities, the global community?
Oh, for me, it's the standardization and the infrastructure, because it goes all the way up to governments and governance. And so it is true that, for instance, and nothing against any U.S. representative.
You're going to say something about Microsoft.
But, like we
oh, by the way, I love Microsoft Teams.
Okay. At XR for Europe, we're seeking to actually, have a space where we're not either, elbowed by China or by the US, because we do have a thriving ecosystem industry here in Europe. It just requires more sharing, more synergies, more discussions to get to a standardized market as you have it in the US or they have it in China. And so I think that's our USP as well in Europe, because we can give the trend for the entire world then, because since we know how to deal with the fragmentation locally, we can help build a global community.
I think from my perspective is a little bit because I'm in the space for many years now, and I feel that there are so many smart people creating the most amazing technologies. And then sometimes I have the feeling that we're trying to find a problem that the technology that we just invented can solve, instead of having a little bit of an mindset to see, okay, what is the problem and which is the best technology? So when most of the times I'm in XR meetups, it's all about, the resolution, the sensors, the new hardware is coming out, and less on what are we really doing with it. And I think this is a little bit of approach that I hope that in the future will change a little bit, and we'll have the human in center and the user experience, and then we'll see which technologies we need to solve different problems. Like you said, with emotions. How can we change this Microsoft Teams problem where you don't see the other person really in the eye, but you're looking into a screen?
Oh, you just wait.
Sergiu, there is one thing. I don't think that the human is not at the center. I like to disrupt this idea because I hear that all the time. Oh, let's put back the human at the center of technology, and I'm like, well, in XR we're right there. We like, you can't be more center stage than with your VR goggles on, and what you feel as embodiment and such other presence in space. So I feel that it's very much at the core, but we are still working on it, yes, indeed. Yeah.
It's just like a little bit of a mindset that we are,
You're right. I mean, as engineers, we always invent the technology and then figure out what to do with it later. And so that is a problem. But what I think the problem with XR, whatever you want to call it, over the years, for many years, is really back to the idea of it's 3D. And we just don't have a lot of great examples of what to do with 3D except gaming, right? Clearly, immersive gaming is amazing, right? There's no questioning that people have so much fun doing that. But come up with another example where you have to use 3D. I can, and I'll show you later, but it's hard. Right? Like, why do you have to use 3D for whatever that thing is that you're doing?
Right.
Some cases, it's completely obvious, and you're like, well, of course you're using 3D. It's just better. But a lot of times it's forced. And we have to stop forcing people into dimensionality when it's not needed.
Well,
we have to find the pure reason to do it.
In the medical field, I would say that's where it's got a lot of development as well, because just like you said, it's 3D, and you want to understand the body that you're going to be operating on in 3D. So there are lots of very, very interesting developments in that field.
Right. I mean, that saying, like, don't use technology for technology's sake. And 3D, going back to the 3D reference, is that, people wanted, just to put anything in 3D. And it's like, no, does it really have to be in 3D? Same thing with the metaverse and with VR. And to your question, I would basically say that instead of a challenge, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for all of you to get involved. And as you said earlier, that we're all just figuring it out. Look at the common thread with everyone up on stage is that we're speculating a lot about what's going to happen in the future, what technology is around the corner, and that opens up opportunities for all of you. And as Amy Peck mentioned earlier, that it's going to reach into all industries. And so think about all the jobs that's going to create for all of you out in the audience. Get your feet wet, just try it, and then you'll realize, like, oh, it's not so scary. Like the AI. I spoke to a school, and it was all screenwriters, and they're all graduating. They're saying, "Are we screwed?" It sounds like AI is going to take over our job. And I said, "Listen, no. Do you know how many times throughout my career or my friends' careers that there'd be moments where there'd be the scary moment that's going to take our jobs. Final Cut, After Effects, right? There's all these softwares. And I just said, just learn your trade and then dabble in AI, and then it'll allay some of those fears.
Exactly.
So,
yes,
and with this
training.
I want to thank you all. The discussion can go on forever with you on stage. It was an honor having the discussion, and looking forward for the next panel. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.